Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. This is the first episode of Multifamily Chronicles Live. Thank you so much for joining Tony and I today. Welcome to the show, Tony.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited everyone's decided to join us for a little bit of time on their Thursday.
Tony, just to get this started, one of the questions that came from the audience when I started advertising the episode was, hey, tell us about your journey from leasing consultant to vice president of the company. Let us in on your journey a little bit. And I will say, tell us a little bit about, some great things that you learned along the way, some great things that someone could use if they want to follow the same path or a similar path.
Yeah, no, hey, good morning, everybody. Awesome to see some faces there, the names in the boxes. I know there's faces behind there as well. So thanks, guys, for hanging out. Yeah, so big question. I saw that question come in the comments early on, from LC to VP. There's a lot of days involved. There's a lot of years involved in this process. I don't have to tell anybody on this call. And frankly, I'll tell you where I am today was really, it may sound counter to today's sort of self-help gurus and other things like that. I'd like to say, I envisioned being here. I didn't take that approach. I knew I had a lot to offer, but at the end of the day, I was committed to just giving a good day's work every single day and being optimistic about every opportunity that I had, trying to say yes to every request that I received, and trying to do the best job that I could at every task I was asked to do. And you look back and I won't date myself too much here, but just about 20 years in, times 365 days, here we are doing that. Probably some weekends in there, a few vacations here and there. But that, for anyone that's sort of looking to grow their career in all different sorts of ways, that's the best advice I can give. Now, some of my background, some people may know, some people may not know. I did start as a leasing consultant on the floor, and it was a competitive, big community. My closing ratio probably wasn't what it was in the end when I started, so I had a lot to learn. I was afraid to ask for deposits like many leasing consultants. I didn't want to push them into a decision maybe that I didn't feel that they wanted to, and frankly, I think I was just probably nervous. And so I did start on the leasing floor, and so today I when I visit sites and my properties, I just love being able to interact with today's leasing consultant and those on the floor, and those really kind of in an entry-level position. Fortunately, I still have a good memory, so it doesn't it doesn't feel like that long ago, although it was about 17, 18 years ago when I got started. It still feels like yesterday to some extent. I can understand the pain points. I can relate. You're trying to close on deals and other things, and it's just not happening. So, but it's been fortunate. I've been able to be in every single role, and obviously in the role that I am today. And it really just allows me to have an understanding of the challenges of that role, which I think as a leader helps me empathize with their day-to-day challenges, and also help troubleshoot and help them work through some of their challenges as well. So anyway, long-winded answer, AD, but I think just putting in a good day's work every single day and remaining optimistic that there's going to be a positive outcome that day will turn into positive outcomes, for that week, and positive outcomes for that month, and hopefully positive outcomes for the years ahead.
Tony, the next thing that I wanted to touch on is leadership. The whole social media, our lives are inundated by inspirational quotes, by all sorts of things that are labeled as leadership. As a matter of personal opinion, I think that there's just a lot of information that really doesn't help folks out there when they're aspiring to become leaders. It's more of a feel-good type of conversation that doesn't really have a practical application in the real world. With that being said, I'd like for you to get your take on what I just said, and then secondly, I'd like for you to just kind of describe, what is leadership to you? What does it mean to you? And who is Tony Sousa as a leader?
Well, I was hoping that you would give me a bigger question. Just kidding. Obviously that's a big question, and who am I as a leader? I think today's expectation is that we need, as leaders, that we need everyone to like us and to agree with us, and all be on the same page all the time. My experience has been, and I think where my ongoing experience continues to be chiseled and made better on a daily basis, is often in the adversity, in sometimes the disagreement, in direction. I think it challenges us as leaders to be able to communicate that more clearer to our teams. Holding our teams accountable is key, but as we've mentioned before, how that starts is me holding myself accountable to my own expectations, and frankly to also the organization's expectations and my teams. And if I'm not doing that in my heart of hearts, I have no right, although maybe by title I have some right, if you will, but the reality is they're not going to be wanted to be led by you. If they don't see it in you, they don't see the actions in you, they don't see the desire in you, they don't see the purpose in you. You could tell them all day long, but it rings hollow to them. And so for me, I'm constantly a work in progress on myself. The cliche term, we're all our hardest or worst enemies in some situations. And I think that's true, and I think that's okay to some extent. But if I'm not working on myself, making myself more accountable and better, and ultimately a better leader, then they have no reason to follow me. And for me, what's always been important for me to just break down the word leadership or leader. There's no one in front. And so it's oftentimes, and we find ourselves, especially online at this point, like there's not a lot of people doing what we're doing. There's no one there's no North Star oftentimes in a situation. And that takes a lot of resolve. Frankly, it takes a lot of courage to plow ahead when there's no path blazed ahead. And so when you're responsible for that in your organizations, or in some ways, maybe in this industry, there is some level of anxiety that can come with that, but you have to figure out how to process that, accept it, lean into it, and of course, with courage and bravery, move ahead. And I think, we all on this call probably have some level of teams that are following us and looking to us. The reality is we don't know what the future holds, and frankly, we don't know what the next couple steps ahead may be, especially in a tough 23. But what we do know is that we're willing to stay together, stay linked together. We're going to trust each other. We're going to support each other. And in doing that, the likelihood of us being successful as we go forward is very high. So
I had a great comment, very interesting comment from Jeffrey. He said, lead by example, not order. What do you say?
I think it's right on. I posted something not too long ago that leadership is not a title. And I believe that in my heart as a leasing consultant. And I would probably go home and tell my wife, listen, I don't have the title yet, but I'm a leader, and I believe myself to be a leader. And what does a leader do? They set the example, as Jeffrey said. They do the right thing when nobody's watching. They see trends, or they see things happening in the future that they're able to connect the dots to say, I think this makes sense. Let's proceed with that. And sometimes you make the mistake, and you learn a lot from those mistakes. Frankly, you learn probably the most from mistakes and adversity. We all know this. And so I strongly believe, obviously, that leadership is not about a title. We just happen to be in titles because we have to form organizations in some level of structure. But most leaders, lead because it's their passion to lead, and it's their desire to lead. And frankly, it's probably, their gift to lead others. Let me just say this, and this is just top of mind, and I hope everyone can tell none of this is scripted, that it's okay to be a follower too, right? Even as leaders, I have bosses as well. And that's a different skill set. That challenges your level of humility, your ability to communicate, to express disagreement in a productive and constructive way, that's probably for a different call. And it's not as sexy as talking about leadership, right? Followership. I think there's other good books and things like that out there. To be able to do both, I think is a really, I think it's a really wonderful quality to be able to do both. And frankly, in my day job and in my life, I have a wife, and I'm often a follower there. I'd like to think a leader at times as well, but I can do both. I think pretty well. But given the gifts as a leader, you're sometimes called, and you have to accept the calling.
There's another question that just came in through the chat from Scott. Scott is asking, what are some good leadership books or podcasts you have found to make a good impact on being a successful leader?
You know, there's a whole bunch out here. There's a handful of you guys on this today that could probably give like this super long list. Mike's looking at his library of leadership books back there. One particular book that really changed my trajectory, was a book by Doug Conant. He was the former CEO of Campbell's Soup. It's called Touch Points. And I read that probably 10 years ago. Really, the main thesis of that book was, I think oftentimes as leaders and managers, we think these soft conversations or these interactions with our clients. Thanks, Mike, for chiming in on that. Some great stuff there. I think we often think these soft conversations or check-ins, how are you doing, and what's going on here and what's going on there. I think sometimes we think of that as babysitting, or I don't have time for that, right? I have to get to email and work on a report or whatever I need to do. Like in our minds, we've created what we think is good leadership tasks. I think we're very task-oriented oftentimes, and in my own success and those that I've seen incredibly successful as leaders, they're often the most thoughtful and empathetic people to their staffs, and they really care, because frankly, when you show your teams you really care about them as humans, they're more inclined to listen to what you have to say about where we need to go. And so that's just one particular book. There's a lot of podcasts. Simon Sinek, I'm a big fan of. I just love raw, authentic conversations that are totally unscripted. That allows me to also formulate my own leadership style. And frankly, I do a good amount of reading, but I love to sort of take feedback in all sorts of ways. But sometimes I do like to spend some time in my own head a little bit and my own observations and trust my own intuition about what's right. And frankly, like, I'm sure years ago people were like, this guy, is he really like putting quotes together with his own sig on it? Like for real? But the reality was, the connection for me is I have something to say, or I have an ability to phrase it in a way that means something to me. And most of the stuff that I push out, it's important for everyone to know that's here listening, is not, it's usually for me. It's usually to inspire me or to encourage me or to remind me of something. And I've just, over the last 2 or 3 years, post-pandemic, through the pandemic, people drawn to this. I've just realized that so many more people are going through what I'm going through too. And so it just becomes this massive community of relatability that really stemmed from my willingness and courage to say, I have something to say, and I'm willing to say it. You don't have to engage with it. You don't have to like it. And frankly, you can unfollow me. I'd hate to see that, but you don't have to hear that. Those things were for me, to encourage me and to put it on paper in some ways, as we're all encouraged to do. For me, I think LinkedIn sometimes can be my own journal. And I just appreciate people sort of relating and chiming in and supporting along the way. The level of hate is like 0% online, and I can't say that for Facebook or other channels, but on LinkedIn, it's all love, and it just has meant the world to me. And frankly, it's just energized me to give back to that same community, because it's so many people have given to me, and so it's ultimately my responsibility. I see it today, and I think many of you believe this as well. It's our responsibility as leaders and thought leaders and others to be able to pay it back and give it forward to the next group that are coming up.
I want to pick up on the part, Tony, where you said, I know I'm a leader, right? I might not have the title, but I know I'm a leader.
Yeah.
So to me, my definition of leadership, very simple put, is leadership is influence, is not a title. Do you agree with that? Anybody could influence other people. You don't have to have a title.
Absolutely. I mean, influence is a whole bunch of different things. We could probably give a technical Google term to that, but ultimately, I think what influence is somebody really acknowledging your desire or passion for what you believe, and they're willing to consider your beliefs in that, and they're willing to try it. Leaders with no influence, and this word influence is caught on to like influencer, and it's all kind of weird now, but the reality is the most effective leaders in business and in life, regardless of title, are some of the most influential people that you'll ever meet, is because they're most passionate about what they believe. They're pretty articulate, they're great communicators, and because of those qualities, I think more even than great communicators, they're most passionate. I think we're drawn to passionate people that believe in what they believe. It's often why we're drawn to brands and other things that do a great job of humanizing themselves and expressing what they believe. We're drawn to that as human beings, and I think we need to continue to be okay with that. And I think we are, and just by the number of names here and seeing the faces, I think shows to some of that.
As I was saying at the very beginning, Tony, this is really about everybody that participates today. It's not about you and I having a conversation that I say we envision we should have. I'm telling you, we've been inundated with questions and comments. So, raw situation, ready to go, ready to roll.
No, I mean, this, and you and I both know, we talked about this, and we've seen some semblance of this type of format, but I love this. Guys, first and foremost, let me just thank you for joining us today. You guys all have busy agendas. You probably have meetings right now that you've had to shift around. So you just spending a little bit of time with AD and I, and together as a community, I just want to say a heartfelt thank you. This has nothing to do with my own ego or status or thoughts. We're super grateful for your time and your connectedness in the community, and many of you guys are in my DM box, and that we're friends and we're connected, and we just thank you for that. So I'm excited. This is why we did it, is to answer any questions that you have from any guys like me or AD or anyone else that wants to chime in and give some feedback. This is a collective group discussion, and I'm here for it. So AD, let's get this rocking.
I'm just gonna double down and say, I'm super grateful for everybody that took the time today. It's just amazing to see you all here. We have a comment from Ali. There's a vast difference between a leader and a manager. You can be a leader without having the title. What say you, Tony?
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what we've just been talking about. I mean, a manager by definition is to manage things. Isn't to necessarily lead things. We talk about it in football, right? That QB is a great game manager. Okay, well, what does that mean? It just means that he's not turning the ball over. He's making safe plays. He's just doing it by the book or by the policy. And if he does that, or she does that, we'll be okay. I think there's something good about being a good manager. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's leader versus manager. There's something great about being a great manager. Manager of things, keeping organizations organized, keeping people organized. I think that's successful businesses do a wonderful job of that if they do a great job structuring their organization and putting the right people in place. And there's degrees, regarding organizational business management as well. A leader is a little bit different. I think you can be a great manager and a great leader. I think you can be and often I think good leaders are good managers, but I wouldn't say all the time that they're great managers. I think great leaders sometimes think differently. They're wired a little differently. They sometimes they can be high level. And so, when I think of a manager, I think of, the devil's in the details and organizing and managing the details. Sometimes great leaders, that's not probably their best skill set. David, good to see you, man.
Yeah, we're trying to allow more of you guys to become co-hosts and, turn your videos on, of course, if you want, if the situation allows. Here's another one from Candace. I love learning from our leaders, learning what we like and do not like. taking those things you like and incorporating them in ourselves and leaving the things we dislike behind.
So let me say this to that. That's a great point, Candace, and thanks for chiming in. I think we often, especially as we grow in our careers as managers or leaders, we try to emulate or try to be like somebody we really liked, right? And I think that can often be dangerous for us, because what it doesn't allow for us is to really tap into ourselves to find out, who am I as a leader? Who am I as a manager? I think it's okay initially as you try to emulate, because at some point, you're trying to figure out who you are as a leader and as a manager. And frankly, we're all in that process. Some of us may be a little bit more advanced than others with experience. Daniel, good to see you. But I think having some role models is good, but at some point you're going to have to make that decision to say, who are you and what do you believe? And I think Candace makes some good points there, because frankly, some great managers and leaders that I've worked for, I disagree in some situations, and I have. But I always remembered and took note that when I'm in this position of influence or position of leadership, I will conduct myself a little bit differently in that situation. And that's okay. It's no disrespect to them. We are uniquely ourselves. And that's the greatest gift that we can give is to tap into that more and more. And frankly, that's probably the sweet spot that I'm finding myself in now, is just having more courage and leaning into more and more of who I am and the gifts that I have to offer both the world personally and professionally. And it's a really exciting place to be. It feels like you're in the clouds a little bit in some ways, from a confidence standpoint and a belief in self. And things try to get you down, but I'll tell you, when you find that kind of cerebral place to be and belief in self and confidence, it's a good place to be. I encourage everybody, if they haven't found that spot, to keep searching for it. You'll find it.
I have a really, really good question from Tara Samuels. Tara, would you like to go live and ask the question yourself?
Tara, do it. Try to see your name. You're muted.
You're muted.
Put it in the chat.
We could circle back around, and if you don't want to ask the question live, I could just ask it. It's not a problem. Here's another one. Here, I'm currently in a situation where I don't have career development. I want to grow. How do I know when it's time to move on from your current leaders?
That's a tough one. I mean, there's a lot of variables there on when it's time. The best advice I'll probably give to anybody here on this call, I think in your heart and mind, when those are connected and they share the same message that it's time to go, I think you need to listen. And I think before you get there, hopefully you're taking the extra time and effort to speak to your supervisor or manager, to talk about some of your frustrations, or maybe how decisions are made or what the culture is. Make sure you do your own due diligence in that process. That's always the best and most professional way. But if you've extended every resource you can to try to improve the situation, and the people around you that you trust and love are telling you things, and your heart and mind are telling you things, at some point you have to listen. And it takes courage to listen to that, because you may be in a role that you've been in for a long time, but you do have to listen to that. And as many of you know, I recently left an organization that I was with for quite a while, and I wish them well. But opportunities arise, and looking back on it, it's been probably one of the best decisions that I've made, although hard.
Tara, you're next. Unmute yourself and ask your question live.
Hey, can you hear me?
Hey, there she is.
Hey, I don't know what the heck happened. I didn't have any audio or video, but hey.
Hey.
There's some good people on this call. So Tony, I wanted to kind of refresh your memory on the Impressions interview that you did for me a year plus ago. And one of the questions I asked you was about your mentor. And you had said that you have many mentors, and what you appreciate is their honesty and their willingness to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear, which I think is so poignant. And so I'm curious, along your journey, what is something that you kind of needed to hear that has helped you?
Tara, great to hear from you, and great question. And I'll be really honest with the audience. I think at times what I needed to hear was that my shit don't stink, or excuse me, my shit does stink. And I think it, and what I mean by that isn't a persona, but a decision, or I think very highly of my opinion of something. And at times I've had mentors say, listen, you've made an articulate point, but I frankly think that you have blinders on here, and I think you're wrong. And this is why. And though that type of feedback over the years, because I'll tell you, somebody who believes in themselves, and I think most of you on this call, have a level of self-belief, it can sometimes cloud your ability to see all angles, right? You sort of get into this tunnel vision of listen, I'm right more often than I'm not, and I've never made a bad hiring decision, or my track record's been great over the years, or you're sitting pretty and your assets are performing at a high level. You start to, what I say, start drinking your own Kool-Aid, or believing your stuff doesn't stink, right? And then you need those people in your life, professionally and sometimes personally, to say, listen, I think you're wrong, and this is why. And for me, if there's any credit that I do give myself, is my willingness to listen. Josh, good to see you, man. Is my willingness to listen and then actually apply that feedback as quickly as absolutely possible, even if it's incredibly uncomfortable. And a lot of the feedback sometimes, especially when you're growing and stretching in your career, is super uncomfortable. But oftentimes it leads to the greatest successes. And I think probably many on this call would agree.
I have an amazing question here from Ken Madsen. Tony, I agree with your quarterback metaphor. Regardless if you like him, Tom Brady is the definition of a leader and a manager. Thoughts on the power of figuring out that balance. Easier said than done, but he will go down as the best ever, more than likely. Kind of cool way to look at both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I said it before. I mean, I think you have to be both to be most successful in what you do. Sometimes leaders, need to probably get back into being a bit more structured and organized a little bit. You can get pulled in a lot of directions. You can kind of be big thinker, visionary guy. Obviously, at my level and many other levels, I'm dealing with some not even with my own company, but I'm saying with clients and others. I mean, they're high level visionary guys. They don't want to get stuck in the details, and that's okay. And I think sometimes you got to be careful about getting in the weeds too deep, but you also have to be dangerous enough to know the weeds. And I think that's important because it means a lot to your team. It means a lot to your team that you understand the weeds. You may not do it day to day. You may not use the same systems or softwares or logins, but you understand what they're doing. And when they come to you and say, hey, listen, I got a bottleneck, I got some issues, you cannot just brush that off like it's no big deal. You have to listen, and you have to have some level of not only empathy, but context and working knowledge of what they're talking about. You're muted. AD, you're muted.
Amazing. We're inundated with great questions. So David Laurenton, would you like to ask the question live, sir, yourself?
David, good to see you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to see y'all. Thanks, Tony and AD. So my question is, would it say you have a team of 5 leasing consultants and maybe the best leader on that team is not the best salesperson? How do you handle that situation? How do you promote them? How do you handle it with the best salesperson? Because we always hear about, maybe the best salesperson isn't the best leader. So,
yeah, I think it's a great question. The reality is everybody's not great at everything. Is the honest answer. I'm not great at everything. We could probably spend the next hour of me talking about what I'm working on. And so, but I think what makes it a dynamic team, because and I'll look at all your wonderful faces and names. And the reality is there's great strengths that each of you have, and there's probably notable weaknesses, whether you've disclosed them, whether your supervisor knows them or not, or you're willing to admit them yourselves. That's just the reality. We're all human about that. And the quicker you embrace that, the quicker you can get better at them. So, but to answer your question, David, how do you stack this team, right? Because it's a sales team, right? But you're a great leader, but man, you cannot close a deal. What's the issue? And I think as a supervisor of that team, I think you have to just see each one of their unique gifts and abilities. If they're a great leader, but they're not a great closer, you got to find out, are they just afraid to ask for the business or ask for the money? I mean, what's going on? And I think that's over coffee. You find that out, right? To where they're like, yes, I love to lead people, but I'm super afraid to ask for something. And it goes back when I was a kid and blah, blah, blah. I mean, you end up learning all these things about them. And that to me, in my own experience and great leaders that I've observed, like they take that nuanced approach to their team to say, listen, you're wonderful at 9 out of 10 things, but that one thing that's also very important to this job, I'm seeing that you're falling behind. And what's happening is, as a leader, you're losing respect of your other team members because this is a sales job. And so I want to support you and help you as a coach elevate your game there so that your peers continue to respect you in that leadership role, because that'll only strengthen your leadership. So I don't know if that answers your question precisely. It's a real world situation that we often face, and really building dynamic teams based on a group of different skill sets often makes for some of the most dynamic teams that I've been able to build. So great question, David. Thanks for sharing.
Next one comes from Mike Walber. Mike, would you like to go?
Mike.
Ask your question, please.
Yeah, what's up, guys?
Hey, no hard ones, Mike. No stumpers, all right?
No, this is like a mild softball, but Tony, like the last couple of years, things have been frothy, moving really fast, and we've been just riding this wave. And right now, things are obviously a little bit tighter. There's some negative news. There's some, whatever the headwinds might be. And I just love to hear how that's changed and how you're spending your time. Focusing more on people, recruiting, retention, focusing more on making sure that your operations, frontline teams don't feel overwhelmed. I just love to kind of have you riff on 2023 and how you're spending time based on some of the headwinds that we're facing in multifamily.
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, incredibly relevant today. I just got some texts from a supplier that's like, why is everybody canceling this program? Like, what's going on? It's a real thing. And I think it's only going to get tighter and tougher. For me on the operator side, coaching my team, I think we've had some early discussions in Q4 about what may potentially happen in 23. And I think being honest about what we see ahead. And then I think really working together and collaborating as a team and brainstorming about how can we address some of these issues before they arise, proactive strategies. And when they do arise, how do we as a team want to set the expectation of how we handle them and communicate them to clients or each other. And I think in doing that helps the team understand, I think my boss understands the challenges that we face ahead. So awesome. I'm glad he gets it, that it's not going to be like rainbows and puppies ahead. And then I think they appreciate us willing to talk through tactics, not strategies, tactics that we can implement either proactively or in real time as it occurs. But we have them already designed and discussed in a toolkit, if you will, that we go to this as a mechanic goes to his toolbox, or a doctor goes to their supplies to counteract something that may be happening in real time, whether in a car or in a body or whatever analogy you want to use, that you're prepared for whatever it is ahead. Because frankly, we're all fortunate that we've been in this business, maybe not all, but much of us have been in this business through a couple different cycles. And fortunately, I think a lot of the cycles are similar. And what's going to happen in 23, guys, I think we know it's going to get tight. Expenses are going to get pulled back. Expectations of occupancies to grow and to get the rent growth that we've seen in the past. Owners, developers, clients, that they're going to want that, and we're going to try to have to deliver to our best ability. The highest occupancy is the greatest rent growth, given our submarket conditions. But when we're not achieving those things, we need to make sure that we are talking about them as a team and then articulating them to the clients and others about what's happening. But I think some of the best innovation and successes come from adversity. And I can speak for my own self. Frankly, my own personal and professional confidence surged in the midst of a pandemic. And it's not that we're facing another pandemic, but we are facing a potential recession ahead. And I think the best and brightest minds and hardest working and smartest working people will emerge, as they always do, from tough times and potential recession ahead. So it's a long-winded answer, Mike. It's a great answer. I think you and all of us are sort of, wrestling with how do we prepare our teams, how do we equip them, and how do we in some ways survive, through the bumpy terrain ahead. We will, everybody on this call will, if they're willing and dedicated to get gritty, to be patient. You'll see yourself on the other end, and you'll see yourself probably better, more resilient, maybe a few more gray hairs, but I think you'll find that you'll like yourself better on the other side than maybe you do today.
Damian Mills, I saw that you had a hand raised. Would you like to ask a question live, Damian?
Oh, thanks, Adrian. I did. I wanted to just see if there was any tips that you had for hiring beyond the resume, for like maintenance in general, or just office staff. A lot of times I tend to get people that look great on resumes, and then you meet them in person and they sound great. They do great for the first 3 months, and then after the insurance kicks in, you get to meet the real them.
Hey, great question, Damian. I'm gonna let AD answer some of this too on the maintenance side. But David, cover your ears. I don't like resumes. Resumes are a piece of paper, and if you work with a service or maybe with David, like, they can make your resume look amazing, which is great, right? It's good to have a good resume. It'll help you to some extent get you in the door. But in that interview process, so I'll back up a couple steps. My background, many of you know, I was a journalist, and I was an investigative journalist. And I would talk to government officials, politicians, many people with big egos that were unwilling to tell me probably the straight truth. And so my job was to figure out the straight truth about things. Now, often me asking a very direct question to them about a situation would not very often get me the direct truth, because they would bob and weave, they would spin the answer. So I discovered as a journalist, my best way to get some of the answers that I need to know, Damian, which I think ultimately is what you're trying to get to, is like on this hiring process, how can I really get to know them, is to ask questions consistently for any HR folks on the call. Ask the same questions to everybody, right? But ultimately to listen really well to the answers of your questions, and to be as agile and versatile in your replies to their answer, and the subtleties of their answer will put them in a situation they'll be forced to be as honest as they can be, because you now have put them in an interview situation to where they have not prepared for these questions. All night last night in the mirror, they prepared for, tell me 3 things about yourself that are great about yourself. Tell me about a situation where you disagreed with your manager. Listen, you can Google these questions, but when you start asking them questions that are based on their answers in a very nuanced way, in a way that shows them that you were listening to every word that they were saying, and you ask them thoughtful questions to elaborate a little bit more about a situation, and then also let them know you know some context of a situation, they become, especially those who are not being honest with you, become very unsettled, and you can see it in their face and their body language, unless they're like, bipolar or have like multiple personalities. Most people don't. So they get very uncomfortable. Now, the ones that are authentically genuine and have wonderful stories, they enjoy these conversations because they're a wellspring of honesty, and they tell you what you need to know. And frankly, much of it is a refreshing interview. It's honest, it's authentic, it's real, and the stories and experience they usually provide you are amazing. And you're like, wow, how come I didn't find you before? But you'll also find a smaller percentage of people that are caught off guard by your ability to listen and ask questions that they were a bit unprepared for. And in that situation, unless you're just super good at lying, maybe some are, but most aren't. They will stumble into an answer that will be alarming to you. And so then you have to hear that, Damien. You have to hear those answers that are alarming, and you have to say, that was a concerning answer. I've had people tell me, like, I just no called, no showed. I was like, oh wow, I'm like, that probably wasn't a good idea. Like, what'd your supervisor say about that? Like, well, they weren't happy about it. I was like, yeah, they probably weren't. But they don't realize, that answer to that question checked them right off a box for me. But I didn't show that in the moment. I didn't sort of show them my hand in my face or my body language. So those are just some little techniques. David could probably give a whole bunch on this space too. AD, I'll let you kind of speak to the maintenance side as you need to.
Yeah,
Awesome.
just for a couple of minutes. Sorry.
Oh yeah, you're good, Adrian.
Oh, yeah. So when it comes to maintenance, recruiting for maintenance, I will say that this could be a completely separate topic. And of course, as you could all imagine, I'm extremely passionate about this. I've done it for many years. I think I've done a pretty decent job at it. And I've seen how, we as companies, we have to adapt and overcome situations. The rise of the internet, one time, one click submission of the resume. Imagine that, when you're an employer and you're hiring a person for maintenance, that person has the resume sent probably to like 20, 30, or 50 different employers, right? A resume has a shelf life of probably 15 minutes to 2 hours at the most. If you can't make it a priority for you to drop everything else that you have and call that person as soon as the resume came in, chances are that you will never going to hear from them again. Never, never, ever. So that is the first priority, getting them in. Think about it like a salesperson, right? How do I make a sale? How do I cut in line and get in front of everybody else that's waiting in line? First of all, time kills the deal. Time to get them in, and also time to make a decision on it. Make sure that you have all the tools that you need to make a decision on offer, contingent offer, right? We all understand background checks and all of that. Make a contingent offer on a spot if you have the right person, right? Don't overthink your decision. Don't think too much about, hey, am I gonna make the right or the wrong call? We all make the wrong calls. Like, recruiting is not a science. If the recruiting was a science, everybody would follow and be successful at it. So you're gonna be trial and error. The more interviews you do, the better you get at it, right? And again, I've done probably thousands really of interviews. So I think I have, certain things that, really work for me. But when it comes to, again, making a decision, you have to act very fast. Whether you want that person or you don't want, but especially if you want them, make ready to make an offer on a spot. Don't let them leave the room without an offer, a contingent offer. It's like in sales, when you go to buy a car at a dealership, would a dealership person, would a salesperson let you leave the room? They'll do whatever in their power, so you won't leave the room until you make a commitment. You have to embrace the same mentality. We are doing sales when we're interviewing, right? And with a shortage of qualified personnel, it gets harder and harder. It doesn't get any easier for us. If you're making the wrong decision, I will say this, you could always right the wrong. Give the person a chance. If they're not going to work out, they're not going to work out. That's why disciplinary action is for. That's why, firing is for, if it's not going to be working out. But don't get yourself tied up into that situation. Don't overthinking, and more time you take, that's going to kill the deal for you. So I hope that my answer was somehow helpful to you.
Very much. And then I just have one more for you guys. For when you're dealing with ownership groups that have issues with finances, what are some techniques that you guys have that could persuade them to handle the financial aspect of the operations without draining from the management fee?
I'll speak to that, Damien. That's a good question. I think that's probably one. I think that's one that probably affects operators and suppliers that are here. That's going to be the toughest. That's going to be the toughest challenge that I think we're all going to face in 23. I think clients and owners are going to be potentially under pressure here in 23, quite a bit. Interest rates are a real issue, and I think you just have to know what your client what they want, right? So and listen, just already start with, they want their cake and eat it too. Okay, so
Yeah.
they want that. All right. So, jump in a little bit deeper on that. Like, what is it? Are they looking for occupancy? Are they looking for other income items to accelerate? Are they looking for you to slash expenses at every turn? The answer may be all of the above. And so you have to, I think, speak their love language, if you will, as a
Mhm.
communicator and as a leader, to say, these are the things that we're doing to achieve some of the goals that you've set out. These are some of the things that I think are really important to do. And I think you and your team or your manager need to continue to, I think, show strength to your client that you are a trusted advisor and that you're an experienced manager and leader in this space, that your suggestions, hopefully they take into consideration. But that comes with confidence. That also comes, with presenting things in a way that is productive. Be careful of tone and other things that can be presented as negative, or they're not on board. The reality is 23, you're going to have to get creative.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for that insight.
Yeah, good question. It's going to be a tough one, but like I said, we'll make it through, and we'll learn a lot along the way.
Absolutely. We have another hand that's raised out there, Tony. It's Jeffrey. Jeffrey, why don't you go live and ask your question, sir?
Jeff.
Hey, I want to follow up a little bit on what you were talking about, Adrian, about in interviewing. I've had situations where you work against HR and what as a leader and a manager, I feel I need to do. So I'm interviewing the last couple, I put a comment in, interviewing the last few applicants. One of them is clearly not qualified. So in my case, I would like to go through and try to direct them in a way that they may be able to prepare for this job in the future. But HR tells me, nope, just answer your questions, same questions, and go on and leave them alone. Don't say anything to them. And so I've gotten that conflict back and forth, which is really difficult because it's kind of against my nature. I like to try to, you're not qualified. You need to take some additional electrical courses. You're really weak on electrical, and if you want to be a maintenance tech, you got to know that well. You got to know what you're doing. And the guy has no experience. You ask a simple question: how do you change a three-way switch? Well, if he can't even tell you that, it's okay. You need some help on these things. Where HR said, nope, you don't do that. You just say, thank you very much, I appreciate it, and you'll be contacted back by HR. And you put your notes in. The HR calls and just says, we went to somebody else. The typical question. I always like to try to help them and ask, there's things you might be able to do. You may even be working for you. Sometimes just people that want to just get promoted, but they're not quite ready. And that was just always been a tough one. I just kind of get some ideas from the group that may have come across that type of situation.
I will answer with a question. Do you know what the reasons are for doing that?
They said it has to do with being equal. It's asking the same questions to everyone. So they don't want you to say you're not qualified. They want you to just ask the questions and then make your comments back to HR, and they'll send the standard letter coming out, which I think is very impersonal, saying, we went with somebody else. It's a standard letter. You got that we chose a different candidate. We're not proceeding with you at this point here. And I always like to try to help them. And I got my hand slapped by HR for doing that once, and I was like, okay, I will do it again.
Well, this is I'll say a couple of things, but we may want to open this up. I know David has a lot of experience in this space, probably a lot of training in this space as well. What I'll say, Jeffrey, it's a great statement that you make. I'm probably best known for, in my interviews, providing unsolicited advice, and in a very constructive way, in a way that it sounds like you've described. Listen, these are some of the things that are going to help you, because I think a lot of candidates walk away from not potentially getting a job wondering why I didn't get it. Why? I think the best thing we could do as hiring managers is to be honest, at least at some point, whether it be in real time in the interview or afterwards, about why they missed that opportunity. David, you have any thoughts on this, man? You interview for a living. I think you find some of the top talent throughout the country. So.
Yeah, and there are a lot of laws on interviewing, and have to be very careful with what we say. But at the same time, people do want feedback, and if they're not qualified, then they're not qualified. And if it's not personal, you got to leave the personal stuff out. And you can always make suggestions,
This one happened to be a person who was related to a property manager, and she wanted him to be hired at a sister property, but the guy wasn't qualified. And she was pushing real hard to the regional, and I was the director of facilities. And so I'm doing the final interview, and this guy just was clearly not qualified. And so I was just trying to think, well, this is what you may want to do. You may want to take some classes. Here's some places you can go take additional classes. And I got my hand slapped and literally got a write-up for making a suggestion that he wasn't qualified, and this is how he can improve himself so he might be qualified. That's why I was like, I've never been written up. That's like, okay, this is really weird.
I'll just say this, and David, that's a great point. And we do have to be mindful of the laws and legalities being too personal sometimes. And believe me, I think we've all probably like rode that line because we're authentic people and we want to give help where we can. I think your feedback was well intentioned. It does sound like there's sort of some political situation there and some relationships there that you had to be careful to kind of run through. This also speaks, all of us have the ability to kind of assess where, you know, we put in our 8 to 5, 9 to 5 every day, right? You know, if there's minimal flexibility in your ability to give feedback, you know, I think that's okay for you to have a robust discussion with your HR group, just to say, you know, what can, you know, help me understand what I can and can't. And my apologies if I overstepped the line here. That wasn't my intention. I was trying to help. It sounds like there was maybe some other relationships there that probably didn't help your situation.
Yeah, which I didn't know about, which is the
Appreciate
worst part.
appreciate the full disclosure on that, Jeff. But yeah, I think you're trying to do the right thing. I think that just comes down to us as hiring managers being careful how we communicate these things. But at the same time, I think it is important that we do provide feedback to candidates that maybe aren't qualified. I haven't got every job I've applied for. I'm not sure if everyone here has as well. And when you didn't get that job, you know, you'd like to know, you know, some reasons why,
Right.
Not personal, not daggers, but you'd like to know professionally, you know, what you could do to try to get there. And it sounds like you try to convey that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Jeff.
So everybody, I know we're approaching the top of the hour. As part of our commitment to you, Tony and I will keep this for as long as you want us to. Like we're not rushing to stop because it's been an hour. I think so far I've been amazed by the feedback and, you know, the engagement. I like to just keep rolling. Tony, what you say?
Yeah, I'm good with it. I love the engagement. So if you're just sitting on a question or you're nervous to ask or don't want to get on cam, I totally get it. Throw it in the chat. But now's our opportunity. I'd like to think I'll one day meet all of you in person. But that may not be the case. It may be the case. We all go to similar conferences. But please, you know, if you have something kind of burning or something you really want to just kind of get out and ask, there's no limitations today.
We have a hand raised, Donna Pellegrino. Donna, do you want to go on next?
Sure. Thanks, Adrian. So Tony, I'm on the supplier side. So as a leader, I know you get bombarded with suppliers all the time, promising the next best thing is going to change your whole business. So as a leader, how do you decide what's innovative, something I should really listen to, and other requests that you just ignore? So is it about the salesperson's approach, or is it about the product itself? What moves your listening needle? I guess this could be for any leader. You know, if you're a leader in the multifamily space, like, what should I be listening to? And if you're a sales supplier, how do you, how do you best get your pitch out there so somebody's going to listen? So I guess it could be applicable to either side.
So Donna, great question. Thanks for chiming in there. It's a question that I do get often, just offline, but with supplier friends, of course, and colleagues. I would actually attribute it to the third factor that you didn't note. Does my organization need your product? And that's for me and my operational team, organizational leaders, to assess what we need and what we don't. And you know, if you're running a good organization, you should have some idea of what product and services you do need. So I say that to you to say that sometimes it's not about either of what you presented. You know, is it about the pitch, or is it about, you know, what are you looking to dissect, the technology or the product itself? Frankly, sometimes, you know, we just may not have, it may just be the wrong time. It just may not be what we need at this time. Now, if it is something we need, let me speak to that, because that may be your follow-up question. But what if it is a product that you could really benefit from? And frankly, either don't know because it's innovative, right? Or you just don't know because you maybe don't know your internal guts of your organization that well, right? I think that's probably how I get approached a lot is, you don't know what you don't know, Tony, you need me. And so I, listen, I like that courage. I like that, it's my lucky day, right? That I got your email. And I get it. On the other side, it's difficult to get in. The reality is, I think AD will confirm this, and why today's call has been so exciting for all of us, and so many people have joined. And I know on the sales side, supplier side, this R word, this relationship word is always talked about. But frankly, I'm not sure everybody on the supplier side, even operator side, frankly, knows how to build those relationships in a dynamic way that's exponentially growing. And I want to use today as an example, and what AD has done, and some of what I've been able to do is build this vast network of people and colleagues, not only in person, but online. The audience is online. You can reach more people online. I don't have to tell anybody that. It's a numbers game. But the problem is, what happens for me and probably many operators is, as soon as we connect on LinkedIn or anywhere else, they're in my inbox, right? Like, hey, and the analogy of like, buy me a drink first, right? Like participate in the party a little bit more. And not only participate, but provide value without the expectation of return. And I think to AD and my success in this space, we're not selling anybody anything. I mean, other than like, hey, join, my company. But we're not really, we're just doing it because we're trying to help the community understand things. And we're doing this today. AD, I don't think you're getting paid. I haven't seen a check from you. So we're giving of our time freely because we care for one another in this community of multifamily. And so I think when you do that, and you can grow in your influence and ability to do that, Donna, your clients, your potential clients, operators are going to be more inclined to take your call or your email. So if I see an email from somebody I know, or have had some interaction with, or have, they've given my life a bit of value, or my professional life some value, I'm more inclined to probably open their email and just let them know, something, right? Because I think probably what you're dealing with, if I was to imagine this massive ghosting situation of like, it goes into the abyss, the email abyss, and I never hear again. And I don't know if they hate me or they love me. All I know is that they've ignored me, and that hurts the most. Right. So I think it's about that relationship build, but not in your most conventional way. I think if AD and I have done anything to show as an example, is how to leverage LinkedIn in a really authentic, honest way to grow your network. And all we've done is really just tried to provide our thoughts and insights and value freely. And the love has been reciprocated on today's call and in other ways that we experience it. And, AD, just going through his own career thing, and in a matter of days, having, strong considerations for amazing opportunities. I mean, it shows the impact of authentic networking. And I would just challenge the old conventional way of networking, sort of this business hustle handshake, and it's about relationships. Well, if it is, relationships that are the most long lasting are the most self-sacrificing, right? I've been married almost 20 years. I'd like to think I'm good at it, but the reality is, the more I give, you're gonna get me emotional, Donna. The more I give of my wife, give to my wife, of me and my kids and my family, the more endeared and drawn they are to me. And it works in the professional world as well. The more we give of ourselves, the more willing we're to be sacrificing to them, the more they're drawn to us. So and I know I know you, and I know you're out there, and you may be doing a lot of this. This is just obviously kind of a high level discussion about suppliers, because I get asked this a lot, like, how do I get in the door? It's not really a door. It's like potential window, like back door, like the doghouse. I mean, you got to explore all avenues of entry, and be willing and humble enough to do so.
That's a great answer. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I saw a great comment from Lila. Would you like to go live, Lila, and just make the comment?
Go live.
Yeah, I just have I've been a social media manager a long time, and it can get spammy and gross out there. and it depends on who you're listening to. A lot of people over the years have said, just, get out there, get in front of as many faces as you can. And,
It's a numbers game. It's a numbers game. Volume.
And it always felt so gross to me. I was a social worker for years before I transitioned into social media management. And so that's where my heart is creating relationships. But so that's my biggest one, as I've always said, I don't sell anything, I just create relationships. The other thing I think too that we forget is how, and Tony said it over and over and over again, but sometimes we forget, is really how giving the LinkedIn community is, especially in multifamily. Everyone out there wants to help you. I mean, sure, there are some people who absolutely do not, but they are the small minority. Everyone out there is willing to help. And it's really easy to go on and say, this is my ideal customer. You know, does anyone have any tips for me? You are going to be inundated with things that really work for some people. And some you're going to be able to throw away and say, that's not for me, but some are going to feel really authentic to you. So that would be my thing, is just really create those relationships and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, great answer. Great answer.
That's an excellent point. Tony, you did mention, you touched on a few things that, you know, they're very close to my heart. Personal branding. I try to help a lot of folks. And one of the things that I suggest to them is that, look, we're all brands, whether we want it or not. Make a conscientious decision to build your own instead allowing others to build it for you, to paint it for you. There's a immense value into having a strong presence, personal brand. It's not, I think there's people are afraid, well, you know, this is just for the Kardashians. There is no such a thing. Like you could be an industry voice, an industry thought leader, influencer, but it takes a time commitment. I'm gonna share the personal story for some of you that don't know. I just got laid off last Thursday. So on Friday, I had 6 interviews. On Monday, I had 5 interviews. At Monday afternoon, I got an offer, a verbal offer, which turned into a written offer for the best position that I had, the highest position that I had in my whole entire career. I haven't reached to a single person. I had hundreds of people. So you're
gonna get us emotional, AD, and I've been working with, you know, we've been texting offline, you've been sharing some of these stories with me, you know, I know it's emotional. I feel it too. I think a lot of you guys do as well. This community is real, and it's full of real people that really care. And you know, some of us are new to the community, and some of us have been here a while. But I think AD's story of less than a week getting, you know, and he shared with me, and I'm sure in time it'll be public. You know, in less than a week to be able to get a written offer signed, and I'm sure a start date soon, is just an example to all of you. Even you know, and I'll say this, AD, I'm buying you some time. It looks like you've composed, but I think for both suppliers and those who may be looking to grow their career, investing in this community in an authentic way that provides value without expectation of return is probably your best investment of your time and effort, and best ROI that you could possibly have in your own career. And frankly, I think we're just on the tip of the iceberg in identifying this. So don't feel like you're late to the game, or don't feel like, oh man, I don't post like Tony and AD every day, like I'm way behind. No, like now is the time for you to cultivate your own voice that's out there. And all a brand is, and believe me, I've had to navigate this perception of like, you know, Tony's just doing this for Tony. Listen, I have a family, sure, I got to take care of myself and my family, but I think I've pounded the pavement like you have, AD, to say, listen, I'm not just here for me. I'm here to help everyone else, and everyone else has helped me along the way. So AD, looks like you're composed, man. I don't know if you want to end anything there.
Yeah, thanks for the break. No kidding. that was you know,
that's what friends are for, man.
It hit really hard. In all honesty, it's been really overwhelming. So it's just something unique. Like I don't really have words. Unless you really live it, it's kind of hard to, you know, just kind of describe it in words. We have a question from Jeffrey. Jeffrey is regarding CapEx projects. Would you like to go live and ask the question, sir?
Here, there we go. I got it unmuted. All right, yeah, Tony, this is something you might have an answer on. There, you think that ownership is going to come back and pull back on a lot of the capex projects that have been planned in 23? And if you don't agree with the plan, what's the best way to try to sell them? I mean, I know you can go in and say, hey, this water heater's 6 years old. If it busts, you got to do a lot more damage than just replacing with this one water heater. I'm not water when I say water, I'm talking about the large ones, the 50-gallon commercial ones. But you get into those $10,000, $15,000 replacements, and sometimes they're going to want to pull back because it's working now, but it's planned to be changed. What's the best route around that? Because it's ownership sometimes like I can see that 15 grand, I don't want to spend it now.
I'll answer your first question. Do I think they're going to pull back? The answer is absolutely yes.
Okay.
The second part of that question is ultimately, I think if it's a necessity and a part of operating either the units or the property, they're going to be open to that. They're going to ask for 10 different proposals, but
Yeah.
that they'll still be open to spending what they need to keep the property operating. Obviously, there's a small percentage of probably clients that maybe won't, but the majority of clients, I think, for the most part, understand they have to continue to operate these properties and fix things that are broken. But CapEx items, some of the big renovation projects that may be happening, yeah, many of them are gonna pump the brakes and really kind of assess, are they gonna be able to get rent bumps from this in this current market conditions? And if the answer is they're not certain, or their analytics are telling them they're not, they're numbers guys, so they're simply just going to pull back.
Yeah, and they're basing their CapEx budgets on useful life. Useful life says it should be done. It could last another 1 or 2 years. You might get by, but what if it breaks? What if it's not?
In this year ahead, they're going to stretch that.
Yeah.
And I think their investors and shareholders will support them in holding.
Yeah.
Yeah. But 24, 25, I think we'll be back at it. But 23, you got to buckle down a little bit, and that's okay. I mean, that's just the cycle. Good question though.
Just read a great comment from Charles. Charles is saying relationship get you conversations. They do not guarantee business. Point made. Does the organization need the product or service at this time?
Well, to the point that he made, I mean, gets you conversation. I mean, the only point that I'll make that, hey, you're right. But what I'll tell you though, in these conversations, both online and in person, as an operator, I did maybe the crude sort of buy me a drink first. I mean, it's still very much like, still build a relationship with me. Like, by the dynamic already of you approaching me in your role and me in my role, I already know the subtext, right? Like, I already know that like your boss expects something of this interaction. So you have to just realize, probably like someone in a bar or something like that, there's a wall up already, right? Like, I already know what you're coming for. And so you have to figure out a way to authentically have those relationships, get that wall down a little bit more in a very authentic way. And that, how to have a conversation in a really authentic way, you have to live life. You have to be dynamic. You have to read all sorts of stuff. You got to know about the weather and sports and politics and technology and all sorts of fun, little funky, weird stuff, conversation starters. Be interested, as our good friend Masha, be curious about a whole bunch of stuff. Be willing to have a dynamic conversation that's interesting. And at the end of the day, like we tell our sales consultants, that's memorable. Most of the interactions that I do have, unfortunately, are not as memorable, maybe as they would want them to be. And I would never tell them that, but having a memorable conversation or a memorable interaction is a special skill set. And I think those who are very successful in sales understand how to engage with somebody to make a memorable experience. And you don't always get the sale, but to have a memorable experience, there's a lot of components to that. But a lot of it is authenticity. It's real time, reacting to real moments of what's happening, and not going in hard with your sales pitch. It's just not the way the world works today.
The next topic I want to touch on, Tony, it's kind of a long question, so bear with me right there. multifamily has been a great investment for years. There's money put in. There's so many people looking at multifamily, and it's only a limited amount, a limited amount of apartments to supply, right? So whenever someone goes to acquire a property, they had to overbid maybe 30 other groups in order to get a deal. Well, in order to win the bid, you're gonna be overpaying, right? So what does that translates into? You're gonna have a tighter budget. You're gonna have to raise rents at a higher rate, or make rents higher, and everything that you do has a consequence, puts an extra pressure on a staff, which is already short at the property, trying to keep things together. So here we are, new acquisition, we're buying, now we got to make the returns. And all these circumstances that I just described, they're adding to the existing pressure and stress on the site teams. So it's a real situation. I've done polls on LinkedIn, hundreds of people actually voted, and looks like it's a sentiment that most people share, that this is kind of the norm that happens out there. Companies, investors overpaying for assets, and then when it comes to be handed the asset to be handed to the operator, it gets really, really hard. It gets really tough out there. So I like to ask you, what's your take on it? How can we better support our teams under this circumstances and environment to be successful? We want them to.
So I think it's a great lead into the question. And I think hopefully if everyone understands, essentially what's happening is on these pro formas, these underwritings, clients are bidding on assets and sometimes overpaying, and oftentimes overpaying for an asset. So what happens is they have to meet some, at times, unrealistic pro formas. And in doing that, it just puts a lot of pressure on expenses, staff, cutting staff. I don't know if there's any prop tech folks on the line anymore, but they're going to wish that they probably were still on with what I'm about to say. I'm not in anyone's full bullpen, but what their industry is offering and trying to support our industry, and I think in some ways doing a good job, in some ways, a little clunky, but optimizing and utilizing technology in the smartest way we possibly can help us really create efficiencies in staffing, expense control. What technology does. I'm from Silicon Valley, California, so I have a great love for technology, and I understand in its truest form what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to really provide a support and efficiencies to human behaviors that we just cannot either do ourselves, right? What is a computer? It can think faster than you can. And ultimately that's what technology can do, is it can through the algorithms and the mathematical formulas that it's put together, give you data and provide you recommendations or information that you can make better decisions on. And so as much as everyone's trying to pull back on their tech stack, I think what you need to be doing is evaluating your current tech stack, first of all, and are you utilizing your tech stack currently in the most optimal way? The answer is most. If anybody's on a prop tech supplier on this call currently that's still here, the answer, I'll be honest, I don't want to just speak obviously for my company, and I'm not speaking directly about RPM, but I'm going to say industry wide. I think most of the industry's technology is not currently being used to full optimal usage. Okay, so instead of, and that's why our teams are resistant to taking on new tech, because frankly, we haven't figured out the old tech, which the old tech is only 3 years old, right? 2 years old. We still haven't figured that out, how to use it best. And so that's why we're getting nervous about more costs and more new tech, because we're like, listen, we still haven't even figured out the stuff that we rolled out in the pandemic. Let's be honest. So if you're a supplier hearing that today, or anyone that share that with them to say, listen, if you're currently like engaged with a company right now, like double back on them and just see if they need some, above and beyond training or support or anything like that. The answer is probably yes. They're going to say, no, we're fine. But the reality is their answer is probably, yes, we do. And if you're willing to offer that at no additional cost, or find a really a low cost way to provide that support to use your technology better, that's going to make everybody happy. And ultimately, once the site teams understand the technology better, even regional levels, and start to see better results come from it, better efficiencies, potential cost savings. And then they elevate that up or bubble that up to clients that we saved you a penny here and a penny there. Clients are loving that. Clients are happy with management groups. Makes management teams very happy to know that they're doing their job well. And then they shower that love back on you, the supplier, to say thank you for helping educate and teach me what I didn't know. Because the expectation that property management company training programs are teaching them all the nuances of the tech. We're moving too fast, and some companies are way too big, and training departments have all gone virtual, and it's just not happening. So I didn't expect to go down that rabbit hole, but the reality is, guys, I've just sort of like unloaded on you some frankly some industry secret of sorts, that it's not about the new tech, it's about optimizing and utilizing the current tech better.
So I like to stay on a topic a little bit, if you don't mind, Tony. One of the aspects is that COVID has created a situation where we've been inundated by tech because we couldn't interact in person. So, virtual tours, this virtual, everything virtual. So a lot of companies, took the opportunity to build product. Okay. Now that the pandemic is over, there's such a, huge offer of tech being out there, tech that, millions of dollars was invested in, and everybody feels the pressure to sell. Now, on the operator side, I do wanted to ask you, right? How do you properly vet technology, all the tech that's coming at you? To share a few tips with us. What are you looking for? And then second question will be about the support. If you are, and you are the end user, you are the beneficiary of those of the tech. What would you like to see from the tech companies offering from a support perspective after that sale has been made? What is some real meaningful support for the end user that could really make a difference for them?
Yeah, well, Ali, I see you're a prop tech guy there. Good to have you. Let's see, he's not with us anymore, but so what happened in the pandemic, we all know. We were told we need all this stuff. And that's going to help our properties survive the pandemic. And I think in some markets, I think it really helped for sure. But I think we were quick to just sign contracts and sort of bring in a lot of stuff that we really didn't even frankly understand. And frankly, my experience has been in talking to a lot of peers and colleagues, a lot of the tech was probably in like beta phase and not fully ready. But here we are, we're in a pandemic. So jump in. We'll figure it out on the fly and figure out how to have support and resources and tweak the bugs in real time in the midst of a pandemic. And I think that happened. Not all, but obviously I'm just kind of stereotyping kind of the scenario. It was a whirlwind. It was a hurricane situation. Your question, AD, about how does our company, or how do I evaluate tech? It always, I always work backwards from the need, right? Like, where are we not meeting our expectations, and is there a technology or support or a product out there that can help us meet those expectations? And then you have to unpack the technology. The problem is multifamily, this business, we're operators for the most part. We're suppliers. We're not, not all of us are really like super tech savvy. I'm probably, and there's many on this call, but I mean, we could all probably be dangerous enough to ask some good questions. But the reality is, we have to really defer, I think, to our IT divisions and others that are subject matter experts in this space, and make sure that they understand how operations work and how, and how they can help us understand the technology to say, let's be honest, do we really need this? And if the answer is yes, then explore it, continue to unpack it, but don't, my advice to operators is don't rush to the altar. Take a little bit of time, unpack it, get some references, get some other things, ask tough questions, get people in the room that know tough questions to ask, because as operators, even senior level operators, this isn't our love language. This isn't our skill set. We've been in operations 20, 30 years. We haven't been in tech. Tech's like a relatively new thing. Frankly, 5 years ago, prop tech, folks just arrived and said, you need us. And we're like, I think we do. I'm not sure, but it sounds good. And the reality is, I think we did. Multifamily has always been a bit antiquated for the last probably ever. I think we're getting up to speed quickly, and it's exciting. And I think there's opportunities. Unfortunately, it's just gotten really crowded really quickly. And I think the pandemic had much to do with that. So, you know, if there's anybody, Ali, I see you. Sorry. I don't know how I missed you. There you are. You know, so, you know, that's where I think we are. But much of what I just said, I think we need you guys. We currently don't know probably how to utilize all the current tech we have, and we need to do a better job of utilizing that as well. So, yeah, so I mean, that's my 2 cents. I love prop tech. I think there's a great place for it in our industry, and our industry has been a little long in the tooth, as they say, for too long. And I'm excited for us to modernize and sophisticate. And frankly, I think our clients are expecting that as well. So partnering with prop tech and those in this industry to figure out how to get us more cutting edge and more efficient, I think is going to be key to surviving 23. So, you know, it's a mixed bag. I think there's some on the supplier prop tech side that are super nervous about 23, but I think if you unpack it a little bit, based on some of the things we just said, I think there may be some real opportunity there.
There's a great comment from Jeffrey. Jeffrey, would you like to go live with your comment?
Yeah, sure. We always had a group that were more technology advanced, that liked the software and really get into it. And as a company, we would meet, and when we had something new, like when we added Salesforce Lightning to Yardi to work our work orders. When we first came out with it, we didn't just dump it onto the Yardi and say, hey, let's start working on it, because it's a very different type software. And of course, it's, as everyone knows, Yardi is completely customizable. We always had a small group. We'd have a test database that we used for training, and also the test every time we got any kind of piece of new software. Any update went through the test database, and our group would go through it and put it through the paces. You know, we just, whatever we do, if I was in facilities and work orders, I would run a bunch of work orders. I'd run turns, I'd run different parts of it for pricing, whatever, and I'd run it through myself, some of my service managers, some of the techs, and using the iPads in the field. They would get run through it. Did it work or not? It was just not a lot, but it was enough for them to get 1 or 2 times run through it. And then we give that feedback to the group, and we would then, of course, report up to upper management. And then they back into the IT department, and get to your director of IT, and then it gets down to work that way. But we always had a group that tested. Generally, we found it really worked well.
No, that's good. I think that's a wise organization to have, and I think the prop tech supplier side appreciates that. There's nothing worse than they like to go to a bunch of operators or site teams that have no idea what technology is, because they know what the answer is going to be like. I don't think we need that. Like, well, the reality is you probably do. You just don't know you do.
Tony, I like to switch over the influencer topic. And I'm gonna venture to say, right, to me, I'm very involved. I spend a lot of time on the platform on LinkedIn. You're the most prominent, higher up executive in this field, in our field, that it's out there, all the time. I'm seeing, since you joined RPM, I'm seeing like an increase in the engagement for them as a company, like the attention, the attention that you're getting and the interaction benefits your company a great deal. I made a prediction for the 2023, and I said 2023 is going to be the year when companies, management companies, are going to look for people that actually have the audience, have the attention right there to partner with them to help them, promote businesses, basically influencer marketing. And again, I wanted to point out, this is not the Kardashians, carrying a bottle of shampoo and saying buying it. It's a different thing. It's the buy-in. It's, for example, someone like you with your expertise could look at a product and say, hey, I think this could benefit the industry. Having your having you, I'll say, vouching for the product, or saying like this would change the industry for the better. Do you think that this is a possibility do you see that this could become a trend for companies, for management companies in 2023 or in the future?
That's a lot to unpack, AD, on that. I only live my own life, and I see what's happening in the levels of engagement. And I think in some ways I know why, in some ways, frankly, I don't. But I do think there's opportunity for companies to recognize, we'll call them shining stars or unicorns or people that do an amazing job at what they do and seem to have additional intangible skill sets in some ways that can help in different ways. I think the biggest way that probably people like you or I or a few on this call can help is I mean, people want to work with great people, right? And I think, you know, some of us are probably a little nervous or afraid of putting themselves out there because of rejection or lack of engagement. But I think you said it earlier. I mean, my main purpose on this platform initially was recruiting, but in time it was really just to show everyone in this industry what I believed about myself. And it's, you know, it's it's turned into, you know, a blessing and a curse, you could say, you know, more blessing than curse for sure. But and I never expected it to turn into what it is today. But I think we now live online more than ever before. The metaverse is real, and I think you know, I think we'll only continue in the future that our communities are now more and more found online. I don't think this would have happened if the pandemic didn't happen, right? Like this is a pretty normal thing for us to come together like this, and we still feel connected. I think for professionals, the current platform that's just been able to take advantage of that has been LinkedIn. And then, you know, people like you and I and a few others here, you know, have decided to participate in that conversation, regardless of engagement or what happens or pushback from our companies or people judging us. We've had to make that own decision in our own mind to say, I don't care about that. And I'm going to give less F's about that type of stuff, because I need to say it for myself. And I also think that there's others that would like to hear it. And so I say all that to say, yes, I do think that companies are going to explore this. Now, I don't think they know exactly how to structure it. They don't want to bring somebody on that, like, I want you to do actual work, right? Like, I don't want you to just come on board as a name and a face and go shake some hands and hold some babies. Like, I need you to do a job. And I think that's important. There is a level of street cred that is important, I think, with those who are influencing the industry. I think where my you know, credibility comes is, I think a lot of you guys have seen me or known me for a long time. I'm not just sort of a flash in the pan, like, who's this guy all of a sudden, like, quoting himself. No, I you know, I've been around the block for a little while, and I've participated in the party for a while. I've probably been on LinkedIn like 12, 13 years when it was a ghost town. And the pivot that I saw was in the pandemic. I think everyone joined that online community. The reason why I elevated my voice is because it was for me. I was working through my own fears and anxieties of what was happening, and I felt to be a better leader, I needed to be you know, more courageous. And I just shared kind of my journey at that time in an optimistic way that was trying to inspire myself, and found an audience that enjoyed the inspiration. And so we're here today. So I do think that they're looking at people probably like me and you as like, what's going on there, and is there any value there? You know, if I could share with everyone how many, you know, DMs I get a day about people that want to work for my company, I think pretty easily I could argue there's a lot of value there. You know, so but I think it's an exciting uncharted waters ahead that I'm here for it, and I'm here to figure it out with all of you guys. And I just encourage you, if you've been hesitant or nervous to participate in the conversation online because of judgment, either internally in your company or externally, if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's to care less about stuff like that. I know it's taught me that, and somebody asked me what my resolution for 23 is, and you know, I said it's to give less Fs, and that's what I'm currently doing. So there's certain things you have to care about, your job, your family, the people around you, and that has nothing to do with people. But those who are going to throw shade and interpret your motivation to be something other than what it genuinely is, I can't lose sleep or even think about them for much longer. And frankly, the more visible that you and I become and some of the other ones, the percentage of shade throwers grows. But at the same time, the percentage of Fs I give also diminishes. So, so it's part of being visible. I think it's part of potentially what we are now embarking on, you and I and a few others. But we're willing to embark on it and test the waters and see what's ahead for the sake of everyone, not just ourselves.
I couldn't agree more. Before we move to the next question, Tony, I do want to say to all of you right here, there's still 19 of you, with us. We so much appreciate, you taking the time. This is not your usual, 30-minute webinar, and, you dedicated the time to just be part of this experience with Tony and I. I would love to hear from you after the conversation. What topics, what guests would you like to see on the show? Because I have 2 more live events lined up with amazing guests coming up, and I like to hear from you. I like to keep this going. I like to make this like a place for all of us to meet and just talk about stuff that matters to us. It's not about Tony, it's not about myself, it's about all of you, really. Like it's for you. I don't do this for personal gain. Tony doesn't do that for personal gain. We just wanted to be here and offer our time and just answer your questions. There's stuff out there that you might not have anyone to talk about with. Just bring it over here and let's make it part of the conversation. I think it's important.
I just want to add to that, guys, like seeing all your faces and seeing your names there, and for you guys to hang out with us. This helps, especially us on the operator side. I mean, these are some trusted partners. There's a handful of suppliers here. When I need somebody or I need, a headhunter, I'm calling David, right? Like, when, whoever it may be, Tara, all of you guys, on the supplier side as well. This is how you build relationships, and you guys willing to give up your time. Because I also don't think you're getting paid to be here. I mean, you're getting paid to do your job probably, but to add value to your career and to build a network, I don't think there's a check in the mail for that yet. And neither are we. So we just want to be the conduit, AD and I, to bring you guys together to have a robust discussion. And I apologize, I might have monopolized much of the talking, but I think in time, I hope this grows into more of a community-based sort of discussion. And if we can help be the conduit to help start some of that, that feels like a win for me.
Charles, you're next, sir. Go live with your question.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. And just I have enjoyed this thoroughly today, guys. Wasn't sure what to expect, but I got to tell you, just
us either, Charles. We didn't know what was right. we didn't know if it was just AD and I were going to talk today. So
I just said yes. I said yes. I'll be there, man. And I'm glad I did. Going back to technology, you mentioned existing technology, and we're just not leveraging it all, right? I mean, it's just kind of sitting there. So I have a question about the role that LMS plays in that, right? I know it's great for onboarding, it's good for residual training. I know that you can do too much, you can require too much out there. So have you tried, as far as tech goes, adoption and increased functionality, have you applied that? Have you really, are you using LMS as a tool to combat some of that lack of adoption or use of the functionality?
Yeah, I think I'll answer that question. It's a great question. Very, very, very wise of you asking that. I think the reality is, I think we've tried some. I think there's massive opportunity to engage with the LMS to help support and the training side of things and be able to provide tools and resources in real time technologically for teams and others. So I think there's an opportunity there. I think LMSs can sometimes, if not rolled out appropriately or site teams or whoever may need the library of information that's available to them, understand how to navigate some LMSs. I think that's a technological obstacle to overcome as well. So I think there's a lot to unpack a bit there. I don't think there's any easy answer, but I think it can be an incredible resource to support site teams learning and training. It doesn't have to just always be hands-on. I think it goes from the pitch room to understanding the technology, to vetting it, to adopting it, to integrating it, to training it, and then on the LMS, that's where it lives, and that's where the training should sort of be evergreen and live in that space, in my opinion. I'm not sure, and I can only speak from my experiences, but I'm not sure it's being used to its full capabilities, just like the tech isn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Another opportunity, right, for those who see. And invention is born from these opportunities. So, and I think as the times get tough ahead, pulling back and having to really be, really purposeful and intentional in what you're doing. I think a lot of opportunities in different ways are going to present themselves, especially for smart people like you guys that are paying attention.
And one follow up: are you going to be at TAA or Apartmentalize?
I am going to be at both. I have an invitation to speak at NAA, and I will be on a panel, I think, at TAA, but I'll be there. So please reach out and let's connect. And
Okay.
Yeah, nowadays when I show up, it's like, you're real. I am, but it's great to see everybody in person. I love human interactions in person.
Thank you.
Good question.
Tony, I want to save some questions for the next live. I don't want to exhaust all the questions, and
Sure.
y'all, I can't thank you enough. Like, there's 19 of us, still being here, and it's almost been 2 hours. I feel like we could have gone forever. Of course, time permitting, and I'm certain that we will, we will revisit this again with you, Tony, to just kind of do a continuation, pick different topics. Hopefully, we'll get more of you all to join us here, because it's I think it's very important that we're creating a platform for us to have real conversations. Unvarnished, no fluff, no empty words or slogans, just real conversations. If we don't start having the conversations, how are we gonna expect to resolve all the challenges, to overcome the challenges we're facing? And it doesn't just take Tony and I; it takes all of us, really, to come together, use our brains, and come up with the best answers.
So for any of you guys, and David, I think maybe you had a question, for any of you guys that think that I have a ghostwriter or anything like that, hopefully today prove to you that I have been in this business some time, and I know a few things. I could be operationally dangerous still enough, but anybody that's skeptical or you meet, like, is that Tony guy really? Does he know what he's talking about? Like, yeah, I heard him talk. Like, that guy was willing to go off the cuff, unscripted. So anyway, David, I see your hand up, man.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's hilarious, Tony. I was gonna ask you that. Are you using GPT to write those LinkedIn posts?
Exactly. I got a ghostwriter. I got a whole social media team. Like, I don't even know what they put out there, man. Just kidding.
Yeah. But no, I just want to go back to like Damien's point and the whole interview situation and hiring somebody that might not work out. And sometimes we can do all the background work, ask all the right questions, and the person doesn't work out. That's why it's so important to be nice to the people that you interview, to be nice to everybody, to be kind, because we have a lot of clients that go, hey, this person didn't work out, that we hired a month ago. Can we go back to this other candidate that you had and hire them? And can you call them back? And if I was not pleasant in that feedback, then they'll be like, no, I never want to work for that company. And I just think that's a big.
And the interview goes both ways, David. I mean, it's candidates are interviewing companies and the people interviewing them, just like we're interviewing candidates. For us to think it's anything different today, to me, is just ego driven and are you good enough to join my organization? No, listen, this is what we need. Do you have the skill sets that you can do this? Tell me some of your experience, and hopefully hopefully you like me and some of our, what our organization's about, but ultimately people work for people. I said that earlier. So if they have a bad interaction with somebody that's interviewing them, listen, they're not interested, even if you call them back, like, no, I think I'm okay. I don't like to, you seem kind of like a jerk. So I wouldn't care for to work for you. I mean, let's be honest. I'll tell you something. I'll tell you a funny story. AD, I'll kick it to you. I know we're wrapping. As an actor, as a young 20-something actor, I was told by an acting coach is, listen, what may get you the role in an audition is not so much your talent or skill or whatever the case is you not being an asshole to the front desk gal or guy and make friends with them. Because you know what happens is that casting director walks you out of the room, you walk out to your car, whatever. What do? And it's true, because I do this, here in my office, and sometimes they walk me out. Then what do they say over to Brian at the desk? Brian, what'd you think? Oh, he was a dick to me. Then the casting director, like, really? All right, well, he seemed nice to me, but it sounds like, so, that quote, whatever it is, true character is shown in how you treat somebody that has nothing to offer you. I think that's important for all of us to remember that. I love going on site and hanging out with porters, and we recently had a survey go out, and the team that had the highest participation, I offered to a half a day to clean up dog crap for the day. So, A, it could help them, but B, it just allows that team just to get a kick out of seeing, their guy like out there picking up the stinkiest of a mess. But it's also to show that I'm also willing to do the dirtiest of jobs, and I'm no better than them. So,
Tony, before before giving you the opportunity to say some closing thoughts, I just wanted to say to all of you, we have a couple of more events already lined up live. We have the great Stephanie Anderson coming up on February 9th. I would love for you to be part of this experience, continue. I'd like to grow this again to make it a usual thing, at least twice a month, if not every week. We're just in a testing. We're just testing to see if there's interest. Hopefully there is. I think today proves that, we could make this an amazing thing for all of us, really, to meet and just have real conversations. And then I'm going to have Carol Rice and Jen Picari from Swift Bunny on the 14th of February. So just stay in touch, and I would love to have you, come back here for those conversations. Definitely conversations you wouldn't want to miss. Tony, any closing thoughts?
No, you guys have been here almost 2 hours now, and we just thank you for everything. And I hope to be able to meet with you guys in person at one of these conferences. Feel free to direct message me. You guys all have a direct line to me. Now, remember what I said about pushing your product too hard, though, right? But connect with me in an authentic way, and I'll reciprocate that. It's great to see all your faces and your names there. And yeah, AD, I think we may be onto something. So we appreciate you using your podcast platform to help facilitate this. And I was just I'm thankful and honored that you asked me to be the first guest.
Thank you all of you again for bearing with us for almost 2 hours here. This is Multifamily Chronicles. I'm your host, Adrian Danila. Tony right here in the house. Give him a round. I hope to see you guys back here soon. Well, as soon as early as next week on the 9th, and then on the 14th. Have a great rest of the day.